Welcome into play day number 5. It's NACL, and we are coming at you at the midway point of stage 2 of the 2022 season. That is a mouthful. I'm your host, Brimstone, and I've got Tanner here with me, and I've got CJ here with me. This is a really interesting day, and I think we can really emphasize that because you look at the games that we have coming up today, and guys, they all have huge implications, not just for the stage itself, but for the entire season. Tanner, I know you were talking a bit before the match to me about that, particularly about this first match. Touch on it quickly, but obviously we'll get back into it. We have these standings coming up, and this is just the stage standings.
So it's important to note for playoffs, right? Top 4 teams through
Mhm.
the whole year, based on accumulated points, will be making it into the playoffs, right? Right now, you've got a bunch of teams are doing really well in stage 2, but it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things unless they have the points from stage 1 to match it. So Rent Free, who's currently sitting at 13 points, haven't lost a game. They're not in the running for the top 4 because they didn't compete in stage 1. However, the one game that I wanted to emphasize today is TookTheKids versus Arial Rise. This game is absolutely massive because if you look at the overall standings for the whole year, what you'll see is TookTheKids is only 3 points away from 4th place, which Arial Rise currently occupy. So if they win this game and manage to pick up a few points on Arial Rise, it's going to really shrink that gap, and vice versa. If Arial Rise is able to win this game today, they're going to be able to widen that gap and maybe even keep TookTheKids out of contention for the top 4.
It's
Uh,
super exciting though. Sorry to interrupt you. Super exciting thing about like Rent Free coming in this stage and thinking if they have a stage 3 like this, Tanner,
hmm.
I mean they're very well on their way to playoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, they're a team that has demonstrated that they don't like losing, and they haven't done so yet. So there is a scenario in which a stage 2 team, we talked about this in stage 1,
Mhm.
where they come in and just win out stage 2 and 3, that they can in fact make playoffs. I don't see that being very likely because of how well
Mhm.
the other teams are doing, and they're managing to still pick up some points here or there, even teams like Ariel Rise. However, that is their best, like the most likely thing for them to happen is for them to try and win out, and then maybe they can make it. But I don't really think it's inside their control at this point.
Mhm. Cookies. A lot of these guys as individuals have putting up huge numbers, especially we've seen really crazy entry frags. I know we talk about the week to week, but and Dexter's numbers still up there, but we see a lot of one shot LSR as well, even though considering what place is LSR in the moment? 6th? They've got numbers on the board.
Definitely. And of course, we talked about like literally the first week that Dexter dropped his massive entry numbers in that first opening theme park game of the stage, that he would lead the rest of the stage. And sure enough, he's indeed leading. But you see Mr. Woos, that guy had quite a performance last week against Luminosity, one of the hallmark performances of the stage, if you ask me, that guy. And Kilo's just been playing incredibly one shots, just kind of dominating everybody. And that's why it's kind of showing the leaderboard here, just pure utter dominance. And look at 4th in the rating. Gavini, and actually Gasher. Wait, I actually almost glossed over that. But you got Gasher top 3. You got Gavini. I mean, it's like this is insane right now. What we're witnessing, a lot of new names popping up, and a lot of course, old bloods like Kilo, old staples, I guess, of Challenger League, finally having their true breakout stages there.
Aqualix is probably the team to get excited about right now because they started off 0-2. Now they're 2-2, but they've been impressive wins so far. But they're coming on later in the day right now. The first matchup, TookTheKids taking on Arial Arise. Cookies, start with the roster for TookTheKids.
Let's talk about him. You got British, Mr. B, Gavini, my favorite.
No, say
and
it.
of course,
Say it right. Say it right.
What Gavini?
Gavini.
He's not even like Italian or anything like that. He's
Doesn't
just
matter.
from Tennessee. I asked him. He's from some small town in Tennessee, baby. But I love Gavini. He's been a star player for him. Woos has really stepped up though in the past couple of games. We were talking about how maybe his aim wasn't there in some game. They didn't look warmed up, but Woos is he's like sleeper, becoming one of the better players in the league right now. Of course, Packer has taken on more of an IGLing role actually alongside Mr. B. So it's not just Mr. B calling everything. Packer's he's like the Robin, and Mr. B's Batman because he's the greatest. And of course, Trist. I'll talk about him later. I have a critical point just for Trist.
Very, very critical
But
point.
we'll
Now,
get there.
Arial Arise. We know, Tanner, this is your team. We didn't want to take it from you. Tell us a bit about them.
I mean, it's a great roster on paper. This stage, however, it's just not looked the same at all. They've been underperforming quite a bit. There seems to be a lot of disjointedness in terms of how they're performing, specifically between the supports and the entries. And the player that I wanted to highlight, who I think is getting the most backlash of like the supports not being able to enable the entries here. Not maybe backlash, but the most repercussions of that mistake is Freak, who's a player we've seen be absolutely dominant in this league. We've seen him put up some absolute monster numbers, make some absolutely ridiculous plays. The guy's just a freak talent. Like, he's a really good player. But this stage hasn't really shown up on the board that much the way we expect him to, and specifically on the entry department. An area where he previously would have dominated. He's going -4 so far this stage, and today specifically, he's the player I wanted to highlight because I'm expecting a little bit more from him and more from the team to enable him.
Mhm.
If you see him with big numbers today, sorry, I'm a little rambly. If you see him with big numbers today, it's because the team is working better today.
Let's
It's
also
not just an
not
individual
forget
effort.
the history of this roster. Great stage number 1, quiet stage number 2, great stage number 3. So hey, maybe it's just year 2 playing itself out. But Cookies, you alluded a second ago to Trist to lead off your critical points.
Yeah, I mean, Trist is doing a whole lot of dying for the second stage in a row.
Oh, I
Except
thought it was
this
gonna
time-
be good.
This time, right? He's playing a lot more Sledge. He's playing a lot more. He's playing. It's not like he can say, "Oh, I'm playing Thermite." Like, and you can't say that, "Oh, I'm IGLing" either, because, like I said earlier, that's Packer helping Mr. B there. So a lot of his deaths are just, he's just a bullet magnet, right? I don't know what it is. Okay, he needs to hide in a corner. He needs to go in bed and pull the sheets over his head, right, and just hide. And that's his best way of contributing, because he's leading. Well, he's not necessarily leading. He's in the top 3, bottom 3 of opening deaths right now, and it's not acceptable. He's not an entry. He's got entry death numbers right now. There's guys that have more entry kills, as many entry kills as he has deaths, like in terms of leading the league. It's just the opposite for Trist. So hopefully he can clean that up. And when we talk about the IGL role dying, not the case though, I would say. I mean, Mr. B still does a lot of the calling and talking for this team. And I would say that that's something they really rely on. Their team that kind of needs their hands held. They're young, inexperienced players, and they need that out of that guy, and they're going to get it out of him in this big game today.
Now, with the quiet half for Arial Arise, or quiet stage, I would say, Tanner, looking for maybe a louder half of this stage, what are they going to be looking for?
I mean, for me, if I was on the team right now and I was coaching, I'd be like, go back to your fundamentals, because that's what's really becoming the biggest hiccup issue. Things like your pacing, things like your tempo, things like, putting drones in front of your entries, getting that information game going. Those are the biggest issues that I'm seeing going on with Arial Rise right now. And if I were them, I know you have the talent on the roster. Just go back to the basics. Keep it real simple. Don't try to be these complicated, elaborate. Don't try and play a meta that maybe you don't understand. Play your game the way you want. We've seen other teams like One Shot have success doing that exact same thing. And then the second thing, I think I talked about it with Freak already, simply just enable those entries. Get a drone in front of them, no surprises. Make sure that they're being traded. Make sure that the entries aren't overextending past their drones. Real simple stuff. Keep the game nice and simple. Arial Rise should have a really good chance today.
Okay, now we've talked this all out. Cookies, one thing left to be decided. Where are we going?
I don't know where we're going. Let's find out, because we talk about history. Because these two last played on a theme park, okay, and that was TTK. That was actually, that was a sub debut for Packer. Packer wasn't the starter at the time, and Arial Rise lost that game basically to a sub and all that good stuff. And that was funny. So they're banning out theme park. They're also banning out a border where TTK has looked strong at times. I will say the skyscraper insta ban. Arial Rise has shown to be one of the best CL skyscraper teams in the, I guess CL. That's a horrible sentence, but Villa forceful. What are your thoughts
on this map? Well, both teams can play this map pretty well. We've seen, Freak and Mohesi put up absolute monster numbers in stage 1 on Villa. We saw TTK go to this map and look competitive on this map versus teams. I believe it was Aqualix at the time. Overall, this I don't really have there's both teams have made changes, right? And they're both playing a different play style. So this is the first time both these teams, I believe, have gone to Villa this stage. Therefore, I don't know what to expect here. I think this is a map that requires a lot of structured play. If you start skipping steps, you're going to start making a lot of mistakes. You're not going to be able to get to your site execute. But that being said, it's also a map where it's really difficult to get into the map right now, as you can see with entry points being contested constantly at the tier 1, tier 2 level. So where I see with this map, whoever is going to be better on their entry game on both attack and defense is going to be the one who will probably end up pulling away, because they're going to have the numbers advantage throughout the remainder of the round. And I think that matters on a map like Villa, where you need to trade out.
Okay, so predictions wise, Cookies, would you kind of what I believe Tanner's alluding to is that as we see the predictions, the map choice doesn't really affect how we think each team's going to do, because it seems to be a pretty even playing field between the two.
Yeah, I think B's got these guys ready to go.
Mhm.
I think he is the man. Listen, on paper, if you just looked at it and you didn't look at the intangibles, right? You just saw freaking Mohes versus the guys on Gavini and Woos. Like, who in the world would pick TTK? But I'm telling you, this roster is going to come to play. They're going to play and they're going to come to mean business. They've already beaten them before. They should feel confident. They should feel like they should take this game. And usually that is the biggest obstacle.
Well,
I cannot speak today.
Well,
Obstacle.
I'll agree. Normally, I would agree with you, and I mean, I do, because you have TTK as well. But this week, I chose to agree with everything that Forceful said, as I did the little copy and paste with Forceful this week as well. I was feeling good about his choices, his numbers, so I'll just go with that. Now, we are ready to get into this first match. These players have been sitting here ready. I can see it on my screen. We're going to get to Villa. It is TTK taking on Arial Arise.
Thanks, Brim. It's good to be back, and John, it's good to be back with you. We don't usually cast together, so that'll be fun. But it's also pretty surprising, right? That we are almost, I guess today, we are halfway through Stage 2 at this point, which is shocking to say. It feels like we just got this started.
Yeah, it really does feel like yesterday, especially if not for the fact we had a quick little break in the midst as well during that 4th of July weekend, or maybe Canada Day if you're from the same parts as Brim and Tanner. But a pretty important matchup, like Tanner was kind of foreshadowing just a bit for the overall standings in playoffs, and also a good marker point as well for Arial to see if they can actually fix a lot of those grave mistakes they've been making constantly in Stage 2 as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're going to Villa, also something that Tanner brought up, because we have not seen Villa played much at all this stage, which is surprising given that this is Challenger League and Villa is usually a staple of this territory. But we've only seen Villa twice, once on stream, once off stream. Unemployment playing it both times, but against different opponents. Neither team in front of us has gone to Villa in Stage 2. And I think this is something that you and I can both agree on, John, that this map favors both of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen a lot of really amazing lurks coming out by TTK, especially on one of their more preferred maps of Theme Park. So having that whole basement floor as a highway, not only for the roam game, but maybe some of that attacking lurk potential depending on what site is in play, it could definitely help enable those lurk players to do a lot of damage throughout the entire round altogether. So far, though, in terms of bans, things look pretty darn normal. Habana, one of those main ranged hard breachers off the board, most likely having to rely on that ace if you want to play for range in that point of view. Thatcher as well, followed up by the Valkyrie, two staples for the most part. And the final ban, could imagine it being a Mira, and it will be. So, at least in terms of the bans, they seem pretty stock standard in this best of one.
Well, heading into Villa, especially in the new meta that we've got and the new operators that we've thrown into the mix, it'll be interesting to see how both of these teams choose to set it up. Curious to see if TookTheKids will bring any more unique attacking strats out, if we're going to see the Sens projector come into play, or if we're going to see more of a stock standard Villa. On the defensive side as well, gotta wonder what kind of Azami plays we're going to be seeing. And at least for now, it doesn't look like Arial Arise are going to be bringing that out. We will see the Thorn come out from Reed Adams, but aside from that, pretty much your standard Villa lineup. You've got your breach denial, you've got your projectile denial, and of course your plant denial in the forms of those smokes that Jay is bringing out as he sets up down below.
Arial Arise extending as well inside of that first floor, trying to potentially slow down that extension. You tend to see over near the, or at least a clear, over near places like Dining Room, like Memo as well. Even having Arial Arise extend a little bit over near Aviator and Vault as well. Just trying to deny a lot of those main entry points that attackers like to go for to get that vital map control and then set themselves up properly to enter the site from more than one direction. The only problem is you can end up spreading yourself a little too thin in certain positions, so maybe we'll have Arial Arise focus more heavily on that top floor extension for the most part, and if they get a rough idea as to if TTK want to play in that first floor at the very beginning of the round, maybe they'll rotate later on.
TookTheKids will be that south side approach as they open up this study door, already looking to pressure towards the objective and get these defenders moving around. Freak and Mo are actually going to be challenging this one head on as well, as they are holding this extension on this study side. At the same time, though, they've got to worry about somebody sneaking his way down below. You've got Tristus sneaking on in. Mo will be the first player to fall here, surprising Arial Arise, but Quick trade. We'll go right back. Freak then lines another one up, and we're going back and forth. So many kills in this early round. It's Freak who eventually gets taken care of, but in the first round, we have already seen 5 kills within 60 seconds.
Gavini normally having a very slow startup time, even when playing on that Finca, but so far that has not been the case. Already finding all 3 kills for his teammates, allowing the rest of them to gather tons of map control, and already begin to try to set themselves up to maybe go in for more of that back trophy push, or maybe even try to work their way in through statuary as well. That Gemini replicator gathering tons of information, and Jay already having to utilize 2 of his toxic smokes. For the most part, Arial Rise, they don't have a lot of stall potential, except the utility that's already been placed during the prep phase, and maybe some of those shields as well that both Reed, Adams, and Jay are currently playing behind.
Packer taking the time to drone on in, spotting out Jay, who's, again, playing aggressively on the defensive side, really challenging these attackers as they try to work their way through these entry points. But speaking of, here comes Gavini, 1 and 2, and the ace in round number 1 for the Finca. Just heading on into the map and doing all the work for TookTheKids. That is a hell of a way to start out the day.
And it was just completely surgical by Gavini as well. They gathered tons of information, TTK all together, allowing the Finca just to simply charge in, get those 1-for-1s. And again, they had such a good setup with about a minute 40 to kill. They didn't waste any time droning, changing up their positions as well, making sure they had somebody go over near Master as well to force back the defense. And it pretty much trapped them in only 2 locations altogether, pretty much the back of Astro, and then also one defender trying to re-creep their way back into sight over near Trophy. But because Gavini had all the map control and all the openings in the world, he continued to create space and just kept putting the hurt on throughout that entire round. Like you mentioned, collecting all 5 kills for his teams. TTK already have a pretty solid round in their back pocket.
Very solid round, John. I mean, how do you let that happen if you're Arial Arise the opening round on Villa and you get aced? Oh boy. That's one way to start. Something that we're going to talk a lot about in this game, I'm sure, John, is the entry potential of TookTheKids. It's something that they are really good at, but also something that has to go their way for them to be successful. When they get their entries and they work their way in the building, collecting those early kills, we often see their attacks really go off without a hitch. They're able to take that firm control, expand all over the map, and really circumvent any sort of defensive setup that's put in their way. But if they don't get those entries, it's a very different story, and that's exactly what Arial Arise need to make sure doesn't happen again. You cannot allow one player to waltz in and do all the work like that.
Arial Rise already being pushed back just slightly. Reed Singh, thankfully, though, only losing a little bit of HP, not his life altogether. But still, in roughly the first 50 seconds, TTK are already making pretty good pace in terms of gathering that top floor, as long as Trist isn't too far behind either. He could try to work some vertical play, with Dining Room being probably the most favorable site to actually go for vertical on the attack. The only major thing I could imagine TTK are going to have to worry about is this extension in the first floor. If they waste too much time up above, they could be very susceptible to go for some sort of flank by their opposition, or in general, when they try to work a floor lower, they could be met by someone still playing in library, and that could be very deadly when they still have to worry about the site presence and, of course, that extension I just talked about.
Okay, opening pick for Gavini, right on cue. Reed Sink has been dealt with, and Gavini's looking for another. Jay is able to get one back, but here comes the Finca once again, boosting up and taking fights. Arial Arise struggling to get something back here, but now they will eventually have to worry about Packer, who's creeping in on this first floor. There's a couple of different approaches that TookTheKids are trying to work with all at once, and it looks like finally Reed Adams was aware of that, but he ends up walking right into the Ace's open arms. TookTheKids will retake the advantage.
Great patience by the Ace, expecting a majority of that defense to be off the site and waiting for someone to actually play back in the objective room once his attackers are actually trying to clear out this top floor. Mo's still above, but he does have that hatch to fall back on. He's probably just trying to look for some sort of refrag before he eventually drops down, but he's quickly cut through by that LMG Gavin has been rocking with so far the entire game.
Reek and Jay, all that remain. Reek on low HP, and Jay hunting for some kills, I imagine, trying to take this advantage back with that MX4 Storm, but it's not looking good. Without Freak able to do much, and really with TookTheKids barreling their way towards this Legion. Jay's going to have to step up and find that trade for sure. Unless Freak can find a quick headshot, try to surprise this TookTheKids attack before they really spring into action. It's going to be quite an uphill battle for them to bring this one back. There it is, right on cue. Packer will finish him off. Jay, last player standing against 4, can't even pin down the 1 as Mr. B will eventually land the fatal blow, and TookTheKids start things off with a bang. That's 2 rounds in a row.
And I love the timing as well, the little things as well. Both Gavini and Mr. B dropping at the exact same time. Once Packer makes that call, hey, I killed the Legion, the site's a little more free, everyone began to work their way in the first 4. That was just such a little thing that didn't really matter because there's already 4 versus 1. But if needed, that could have went a long way for TTK. Their team play already in the first 2 rounds just seems so magnificent and just so well done to perfectly counter Arial Arise. If you're a team that can get up in Arial Arise's face, they can tend to struggle to remain comfortable and remain confident in those key positions. They had to fall back at a pretty weak stance, and when they eventually ended up falling back, they were greeted by Packer, who was just in the site. He rotated once again to go back outside and feed more information for himself and everybody else on TTK, and then he got active once again at just the right time to secure himself a second kill on that round, and again, force that 1vx, which basically guaranteed the round would be a win for TTK.
We brought up those entries, we brought up the importance of these early duels, and TTK did not disappoint, John. Arial Arise, they cannot let this pattern continue. They've got to find a way to shake it up, and I know I'm saying that only 2 rounds in, but we have seen now back-to-back rounds where they have looked almost identical in the way that they've unfolded. Arial Arise are electing to hold these extensions right in the face of the attackers, and they're electing to take these early fights. That clearly hasn't worked for them, as Gavini has been handling them nicely, as the rest of TookTheKids are playing together well and playing any sort of trade that Arial Arise are eventually able to find. So maybe it's time to see a change. Maybe, and hopefully we can see Arial Arise make some sort of productive adjustment and play a bit closer to the chest. But looking at this setup, John, it looks like it's quite the opposite. It looks like we do see quite an extension coming in from this defense. You've got somebody ratting down below, both on the attack and on the defense. Packer, the counter rat on the attacking side, will work his way up and get that first kill.
Being that lone wolf a majority of rounds, now finally picking the best stop to fit in that role, finding at least 1 frag, but gets caught off guard by Freak. Thankfully, there is an immediate trade, so we're still at that equilibrium, but once again, TTK, they are being very fast on this map control. The only thing they might need to worry about as of right now could be Reed Adams hitting this flank, as of right now, it seems like there is no flank drone being guarded here for TTK. Mr. B was watching that angle, now Woos is holding it, and I believe with Reed Adams hearing that audio call, he'll just fall back. He does not want to give away that man advantage, as if TTK stopped the flank, they would have a really strong chance of hitting the site in a pretty dominant fashion.
Preventing the flank is still pretty important as well, because he has not yet been able to get back upstairs. Reed Adams is pinned down below, both of his staircases being watched pretty heavily right now, as you can see Triss just holding that angle on the red stairs. And this leaves the site quite exposed. It's just going to be a 3v2 on site if TTK eventually work their way on in, but not if ReedSync has anything to say about it. While the other Reed is trapped in the basement, the Reed that's still up above is going to do the job just as well. Taking care of Mr. B, now returning this one to an Arial Arise advantage, and now potentially giving Reed Adams the option he was looking for to come back up.
And still having to worry about both the flank and the site presence at a deficit. It's definitely going to leave a lot of issues here for TTK in these final 40 seconds. Woo's now hopping into study to recover that case, but because Triss is isolated, he's going to lose that 1-for-1 against Reed Adams, forcing Woos in a 1 versus 3.
Drop a nade, send it towards the doorway to deny any entry and take care of any utility that may be blocking his path, but there's going to be 3 players holding a crossfire, regardless. C4 tossed up right in his face, couldn't react in time to shoot it out, so Reed Adams successfully and finally working his way back towards the objective will finish off the round for Arial Arise. They'll finally get on the board here.
And I'm really glad we didn't have Reed Adams just fully commit back to going in the site. He still wanted to waste a lot of time, waste those valuable resources, because if you had Trist being a little more active in that round instead of just watching red for 30 seconds plus, he could have been utilizing those grenades after the util burn had already been successful via those flash grenades, and that could have potentially netted TTK some extra kills, maybe granted an even better position outright. They could hit the site, and then if they kill everyone on there, get that diffuser down, they just have to wait for a 3 versus 1 retake, best case scenario. But because TTK slowed down and took a little too long to readjust in that final minute, it allowed Arial Rise to make those quick hero plays, get those 1-for-1s successfully, and that granted them the round win altogether. I would have really loved to have seen Mr. B be a little more proactive in that position, maybe utilizing more of those lion scanners, but because it didn't happen, we had Arial Rise come out on top, and it's not going to be a quick 3-0 just yet for TTK.
And a great adjustment from Arial Rise, because the entry game that we talked about, even in round 3, it still went the way of TookTheKids, right? It was the sneaky Nook play, kind of sneaking up the stairs, that was able to get that kill and really open things up on the right foot, it looked like, for TTK. But Arial Rise were able to counter that surprise with some successful and coordinated aggression this time, rather than the more isolated and disappointing aggression that we saw in those first 2 rounds. So with that, they're on the board. Only a 1-round deficit now between them and TookTheKids. Well within their rights to claim this tie if they can put something together here in round number 4. They are going to be heading back to Trophy and Statuary, a site that did not go very well the first time around, in a large part to how quickly their Aviator and Games extension crumbled. They are going to rock with that extension again, though, and allow it to be tested early.
Ooh, Mr. B expecting that spawn, or at least that regular peek outside a master window. Almost clicks ahead on to Reed Adams, but he's going to live to tell the tale. Still the 5-on-5, but definitely a big sigh of relief for Arial Rise. They did not give away the entry for a 4th round in a row, potentially. The first of many line scans pops out, feeding some potential information and forcing back these defenders. It almost times well with her grenade as well, and now that Reed Sync has also been damaged quite heavily, he'll have to fall back too, but Freak, still playing near top main, gets eventually cut down by Gavini, and that's a 3rd entry for the Finka.
8-1 right now. Cannot be slowed down, it seems. Question remains, can TTK be slowed down at all as a whole? Clearly, Gavini won't be stopped, but, well, Mr. B will get shut down with a quick shot from Reed Sync, and now the rest of this team working their way up into games and just not paying attention. Totally getting caught off guard by Mo's position. Losing Woos is going to be a problem. I guess they can rest easy in the fact that it's still a 3v3, but now they've got to account for several different positions. They've got to worry about this flank, and Gavini caught off guard in a big way, cut down to 1 HP. Another player down below, though, for the attack this time is Trist, who sneaks his way around and counter flanks the flanker. Packer takes down Reed Sync, and it's all up to Jay.
A minute to go, things looking quite favorable for TTK once again, and still 2 Finka boosts in the back pocket of Gavini, so although he is a little low in HP right now, he could pop another surge and bring himself pretty close to at least half health for the time being, and also boosting up the rest of his teammates as well to get them to over health. Trist, already in the midst of the site, will cut through Jay's skull, and TTK will now take still that pretty strong lead, now 3-1, after they still show all the exact same strengths they did beforehand.
You're exactly right, fellow. The exact same strengths. And Arial Rise are doing the exact same thing. I thought that after we saw round 3 that we'd see a little bit of a productive change, right? Round 3 was encouraging. It told me Arial Rise understand what's not working and how they need to adjust. Unfortunately, I think maybe I overthought it. They went with the same strategy, apparently not learning their lesson, once again trying to take early fights. I don't get it. The 3 rounds they've lost have been all because they've lost those early fights. Of course, there's a handful of reasons, but they're going with these aggressive extensions in the face of the attack. TookTheKids are clearly not getting flustered by that. Clearly, Gavini is doing fine. Clearly, the rest of the team is, dying here or there. We saw Woos take an unfortunate fight and just not look the right way. But the trades were still found. The man advantage was still in the favor of TookTheKids almost every single moment, if that round, unless maybe the 2 seconds where we saw an even 3v3. Aside from that, it was TookTheKids the entire time, and Arial Rise who are struggling to find their footing on Villa.
And if it wasn't for TTK either A, misdroning Mo, or B, just expecting him to leave because we already had TTK win the entry once again by the hands of Gavini, we probably would have had still a very dominant round altogether for TTK. That was really the only problem they had in the round. Even when we saw Reed Adams go for a flank because Triss was still playing for Nate in that first floor and he hadn't moved up at all with the rest of his team, he was able to allow this pincer to happen on main stairs. He killed the flanking mute, and all they had to do was just push back into sight because at that exact same time, Mo had also fallen to Gavini as well. So still, the team play is fantastic, and so is the entry game. Woos and Triss now joining in on the fun, and in a matter of moments, it's a 5 versus 3 and a 4 versus 2. Mo may find a direct trade, but still, it's a 4v2 like I just mentioned. Things looking already so dire for Arial Arise.
And it would shock you to probably hear that the site was not Aviator in Games or Living Room and Library where we just saw all of those fights take place. The site is Kitchen and Dining, and Arial Arise once again tried to deny the entry of TookTheKids, and the outcome is exactly the same. TookTheKids, now after the entry phase of the round, they've got a man advantage, and with that substantial edge now, a 4v2, they shouldn't have any trouble in pivoting, making that transition to the execute phase. They can pressure from multiple positions. They can take 2 separate 2v1 gunfights. The only thing that's going to stop them is if they're looking the other way. That'll be the case for Woos as he takes a bit of damage, but quickly, Mr. B and Packer are there to find the trades, quickly getting those kills back for their team, and quickly putting TookTheKids up to a 4-1 lead.
And I love that change by TTK altogether. They didn't even need to make that decision to go for a horizontal clear, but it worked like a charm. They noticed Arial Arise, they did the exact same strategy. And again, when you want to go for a top floor clear like you tend to see when Dining Room is in play, you can have a lot of problems in terms of time management when you have to eventually still clear out those positions in Library. TTK, they don't want to deal with that. They want to try to work those early picks since they have been so good mechanically wise during this matchup, or mechanical wise in this matchup, sorry. So they just challenge Arial Arise head on, and it goes out off without a hitch. They find a 4 versus 2 off the bat, like we had both mentioned, and all they had to do at that point with a minute 40 to kill and tons of utility, just walk into sight pretty much and get those 1-for-1s and just simply play the trade game, and it went perfectly well for them. Already a 4-1 split for them. I could really imagine we end up seeing a 5-1 split unless something drastically changes here for Arial Arise, Jonah.
I'll bring things back to something I said in round 2, at the end of round 2, that the entry game from TookTheKids is strong. But when they don't get those entry picks, they struggle. That's what Arial Arise need to think about here. Coming out of this timeout, they've got one more chance to get a defensive round under their belt. That's what they have to focus on. Removing the ability of TookTheKids to get the entry. And if that is simply sitting back on the site and playing way more passive, I still think that's a more productive adjustment than any of the changes we've seen them do so far. If they can force TTK to methodically work their way into the building, clearing their corners and using up that valuable time, if there's a minute 30 left on the clock when TTK start taking fight and start clearing out the objective, I think that situation should favor Arial Arise, and if not favor Arial Arise, at the very least, it should be 50-50. It shouldn't give TTK any sort of crazy advantage at that point. I like what I'm seeing here. I like that we're seeing a deployable shield set up, and we're seeing maybe a couple more of these power positions emphasized by Arial Arise. I don't love the fact that we see Mo and Freak on the other side of the map.
Really hoping that they might want to opt to back off a little earlier than expected to, again, try to play for those numbers. And TTK, they are a team that is relatively known for wasting a lot of their own time. So if we, just have Arial Arise play for that numbers game, and if they're able to win that first entry in, the final minute or so, that could really pay dividends. We saw how much impact Reed Adams had simply by just playing near that basement and first floor. But once again, it's just going to be the Gavini show before he gets traded out. But he still wins the entry and will still try to force Arial a little bit farther back as Woos hops in as well.
I mean, there it is again. It is Mo already gone. I was about to say, is Freak gonna last much longer? Turns out he's not, as he's fallen away. Reed Adams is late to the party with that C4. It's gonna come up with nothing. Jay is able to whip out the SMG-11 and get a nice kill, at least giving some life to a floundering defense, but it's still a 2v3. It is still TTK with a huge advantage. They just blitzed on into that extension and made it look easy, John.
And once again, TTK, they're just still taking their sweet seconds. Readjusting drones, getting those Geminis active as well. Still one defender, over and near 90, that could be a very risky position to hold only with that SMG-11, but I feel like for Reed, he's probably just trying to waste a couple of drones and maybe he'll end up falling back. That'd probably be the wise decision, especially since there's still 4 grenades in the pocket of TTK. If he just sits here with absolutely no util, he's gonna get blown up sky high.
He's still sticking this out. Waiting for those gas canisters to come in, hoping that maybe that will force TookTheKids to rotate around towards that 90 side like you mentioned. But for now, with the ample time and man advantage that TTK still maintain, they have a lot of options. They can just sit back and wait, and Packer, all he has to do is sit back, because not only has one player walked into his open arms, but Reed Adams almost just lost his life to the very same position. Now he's isolated off the site, cut out by Packer, who's now in study. He'll get his way back up the stairs and work his way towards the classical hall, but now the bomb is down, and Reed Adams is out of options. He's low on HP, has no utility to work with, and what it looks like is pretty much no intel about where these attackers are positioned. There it is. Packer will clean it up, and TookTheKids will finish off a phenomenal attacking half, a 5-1 lead over an Arial Arise that simply looks discombobulated.
And for TTK, I mean, they are still just playing their roles, and that's pretty much it. We have seen Packer countless rounds just holding cutoff angles, being on other spots of the map that still have a lot of importance, but only in the late portions of the round. When you see Arial Rise tend to get flustered, that's when they really start to shine. The fact he was just able to sit on study window, even if he didn't find that second kill, he's still feeding comms to his teammates. Hey, site's free. Go plant. You might get someone going 90. Just watch 90 corner near that half desk, and you'll be fine. You can get the diffuser off for free as long as I can just sit in this window. I mean, it was beautifully orchestrated once again by TTK. And Arial Rise, I mean, they were just spraying themselves thin. They are giving themselves only one option, and for the most part, that's just to play to die. And I know Arial Rise, they can do much better if they give themselves more options to play with. Again, I'm going to notate Reed Adams' play, just lurking about in that first and basement floor. If they give themselves more options like that, now moving into the attack, we could see a much closer game, but if they just continue to play the way they did in that first half, this could be a best of 1 match to end rather soon.
Right, and I wonder what TookTheKids are going to do as well, right? Because they're clearly feeling confident, right? Their entry game is fiery. It's clean right now, so why not transition that to the defensive side? Why not do the exact same thing that Arial Arise were trying to do to them? Now it's their turn to contest these entries head on, to use that momentum and the confidence that they've all been building over that first half, and see if they can turn that into a quick 1-2 punch, a quick 2 rounds, and a quick win on this defensive side. They do have these power positions set up a little bit off the site, of course, as Gavini is holding the top of these main stairs on the Aviator and Games side of things. And you've got some lurking happening as well. You've got Trist downstairs. You've got Woos holding this extension. Arial Arise, though, as they appear to be going direct, or, yeah, it looks like they want to either go down below of this site or go direct. It doesn't seem that TookTheKids and their extension on the Aviator Games side is going to come to fruition. They're likely going to back off and play the objective instead.
Well, no direct hard breacher except for the Maverick in the hands of Reed Adams. You're probably not going to really need to utilize all that many grenades for the actual vertical to break some of those K-claws. Probably up on the top of the roof anyway, so it'd be very hard to do that, matter of fact, unless you just shoot the top of those triple walls. So probably just utilizing the nades to maybe get a couple of kills here and there if you have the information that there are a couple of anchors stacked up in either trophy room statue, with a lot of that flooring being soft. Reed Adams actually playing over near the master balcony as well, trying to get a couple pop shots in over near the brick doorway. And Reed Sync has now fully moved from playing near mud to the middle of 90 corner, maybe trying to catch somebody off guard and just waiting for that timer to tick closer and closer towards 000. So maybe if TTK aren't expecting anyone near 90, that could be a huge element of surprise play for Arial Arise.
He's still sitting back, waiting for the opportunity to pounce. TookTheKids seemingly comfortable with that, though. Also taking their time. They know that the site pressure hasn't fully mounted yet for Arial Arise. They really haven't gotten this wall open. Reed Adams still struggling with that. They haven't gotten any kills. Only now are they dealing with that utility. Instead, they're going to actually lose the body first. Reed Adams, though, will get one back, but immediately traded by Gabini.
Yeah, it's just all that direct information. And although the Maverick Hole was able to find one like we had mentioned, it's still pretty much a standstill for Arial Rise as they still have to burn through all these Syria gates and still try to gather a ton of vital map control, with TTK just having Arial's number at this point.
Ooh, Reed Sink, good kill there as it looked like he was stuck on this side of the map, but he'll take the head of Woos, and Gavini also falling. Freak taking control of this site. Back is turned. Trist nowhere to go, and it's all up to Packer all of a sudden. Arial Rise have secured the site and secured the final kill just in the nick of time. They'll get on the board on the attacking side and look to build this comeback.
Fantastic play by Freak as well, probably having a little bit of info that everyone was just tunnel visioned on the Nook. He simply just walked into sight and was able to kill everybody inside of Trophy, giving his Nook more room to breathe and also allowing that defuse to go down as well. The last defender just trapped inside of Astro. Those are the kind of plays you need to see out of Arial Rise, because although they were short on time, and like I did mention, they were a little low in terms of general map control, they were still in just the right places and still had just enough power to get into the objective room and cause a little bit of chaos. Hoping to see more rounds like that out of them as we continue into the second half, but still, it's a very strong lead by TTK. They've got a couple of rounds to bleed. They shouldn't be sweating off that loss too much.
Yeah, they've got a nice cushion to work with, and you're usually going to see teams play a bit more fluid, a bit more confident, a bit freer when they have such a margin. So, TookTheKids, they've got ample time to adjust, change things up, and hopefully learn from their mistakes a little bit better than Arial Rise did on their defensive side. A lot of time to figure out what kind of defensive strategy works for them. But, you know, speaking of strategy, it was interesting to see the huge differences in the Arial Rise attacking strategy than the TookTheKids attacking strategy that we saw on that first half, right? TookTheKids, they were efficient as ever, and they were quick, just blitzing into those extensions, taking care of those defenders quickly, and using that to just slip into the site unnoticed, right? Arial Rise, on the other hand, they moved a lot more methodically. They were patient, and it worked just the same. It was just as potent because they waited for the opportunity to strike, and they waited for that intel. Interesting to see the contrast in how these two teams want to approach things on the attacking side and how both can work if employed correctly. They just got to keep that up.
At least Trist, although losing out on that barbed wire, he still has an ADS or two placed over near the middle of main stairs, so and probably play in that position for a little while longer, but because no one's watching the study doorway leading into top main, that's going to allow the shield to get instantly broken, so at least that can stay for a while. I didn't hear the explosion, so maybe there was a small moment where they were able to actually still take that down, but not really too certain. All that we're certain of right now is that Freak was able to find a frag over in the first floor and can now begin to throw out grenades with that vertical and almost find somebody if there was a player actually behind that bar top, but that's not going to be the case. But still, 5-on-4, not a bad start at all for Arial Rise.
Yeah, not at all. They've also, like you mentioned, they're using their utility really well. Those Flores drones doing a lot of work, and here comes Freak. Double kill of his own as he just works his way up the red stairs and deals with a bit of an over-aggressive and outmaneuvered Gavini. It's going to be a 5v3 favoring the attack. Arial Rise starting to click, starting to vibe now, and it is looking good. Now it's TookTheKids who are feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Packer, the one, may have to step up and get a bit aggressive. Mr. B is actually the one to take the fight with Reed Sink, but Woos is quickly traded, so Arial Rise will equalize. Mr. B, he gets another, and now a third as Reed Adams walks into his open arms. And wait a minute, fellow, this is a battle now.
Picking the perfect time to get aggressive, needing to work those kills, especially in a Titan such as Freak, doing so much damage so far in the second half. TTK now having a completely equal standpoint and still having those smokes to work off of. Mr. B finding a fourth, and now it's actually Arial Rise on the back burner with only 30 seconds to go.
A 2v4 now into a 2v1 favoring the defense. A C4 goes out. You combine that with the toxic smoke, and Jay just has to tuck tail, run, and relocate. He needs to find a couple more kills. He's probably going to have to get both of these. He's unlikely to get the bomb down, especially when the defenders now surround him. A pump out from the vault, and Packer will deny the ace, but he will secure the round for TookTheKids, and they'll move on to match point.
And a major upset as well, and Mr. B adding salt into the wound as well, which has already been well opened at this point as we see match point for TTK. That should have been around for Arial Rise. They did a fantastic job of clearing out the roam and also gathering space. You mentioned as well, utilizing everything they brought on the table. Those grenades, they weren't all just saved in pocket for the eventual execute. They were trying to get very proactive in that round, and it worked for a moment. But then TTK, they just got a little aggressive, and again, it's that getting up in your face style of play that Arial Rise just simply weren't expecting, and they ended up just giving Mr. B several 1v1s. He was more than glad to take those. They put themselves in the 2v2, and they had two fantastic ops to just simply hunker down in the site and play off each other's contact. You had that Nitro we saw miss. You had the toxic smokes forcing Jay to rotate around. He has to close the gap against a Mossberg in close quarters. I mean, that's just a fight nobody wants to take, especially when you're already at half health. That was a fantastic save by TTK, but a really upsetting blunder by Arial Rise as well.
Yeah, you lose a 4v2 advantage like that to one player. Man, you got to be kicking yourselves after that. And now, TookTheKids, I mean, we talked about the margin they had held. They will stretch that margin out again to a 4-round lead. And that cushion that they've held is now really just looking like a brick wall in the face of Arial Rise. It's a comfortable cushion. It's a nice cozy bed for TookTheKids, who can rest and decide really when they want to win this map. But for Arial Rise, it is a nearly insurmountable gap that they're going to have to try to emulate that early last round as much as they can, while also maintaining that composure to the late round. But it's gonna happen right now. The early challenge with Gavini, a pre-fire though, will not finish off Freak, and the Oryx is able to dash down below. Thankfully for Arial Rise, Mo is waiting for him, so they will secure the opener once again.
Unfortunately, Gavini not having that hatch actually pre-prepped, that's going to waste a lot of valuable time, allowing Mo to reposition over in that window in Art and actually kill Gavini before he can get away with a great scheme. It sucks too, especially for Gavini, because there are Kona stations available, so if he came back to site, could have gotten fully healed up and maybe have lived to take another very important fight later in the round, but still a pretty good entry so far. Arial Rise have been pretty clean overall with their entry game in the second half, but only being down one player, it's something that TTK have been in beforehand in terms of situations, so they probably are not going to be all that concerned, especially when they have Mr. B along with countless other Nitro cells to maybe try to slow down or outright stop this vertical play.
Well, 1C4 will go off and it will find nothing quickly after Mr. B is taken care of, and ReedSync is in the bomb site. He's been downed and finished off by Packer, and Arial Rise didn't really panic nor bite off too much more than they could chew there, but of course, the danger is that ReedSync was just left alone to die. Mo, though, will quickly answer with a nade. Freaking Reed Adams will finish things off right back after two quick kills. And wow, a nice kill from above to finish off the round for Arial Rise. So they will hang on for a bit longer.
Yeah, really strong vertical presence by Arial Rise in the round. And again, also getting that first entry, it gives them a lot more room to breathe because there's just less of the map they need to fully clear out, having to worry about players altogether. They swiftly took top floor control. And although we had multiple C4s in play, that cardiac sensor, it wasn't enough. And ReedSync as well, picking a really good time just to hop in the site and cause a little bit of chaos that gave his teammates more time to go move down a floor lower and actually go for that execute. So it wasn't that bad overall by Arial Rise. They get that round win, but they still have a very, very big hill to climb up.
Yeah, 3 rounds still between them and a shot at overtime, a shot at a single point. So they'll have to chain that success back to back to back if they want to have a shot at this. But we saw some good things there. And you combine that with the success they had on their first attacking round and what looked like the success they were having on the second attacking round. And so far, their attacks have been really well orchestrated. If you forget about Mr. B's quad kill and the 4v2 that Arial Rise blundered, if you forget about that, I think they have a realistic chance of making this comeback. TookTheKids, they're going to need to make sure they stay composed and they don't give up more entries like we saw in that last round, because if they continue to do that, Arial Rise have proven that they are a team that can and will bridge this gap.
potentially being a little more reserved, the same feedback we gave to Arial Rise earlier, that might do the trick to a good extent here for TTK. You know, going for some sort of extension is not a bad idea. You know, with information being so strong, weakening that drone economy early in the round is definitely something I'm not going to suggest you don't do, which a lot of roam extensions can help do on top of wasting time. But altogether, you know, if you can't secure that immediate entry in the first 30 minutes or 30 seconds, sorry, to the first minute, you know, it's not the biggest issue to try to fall back a little bit and play in those other key power positions a little closer to the site, if not just playing directly on the site altogether. Seems though for Arial Rise, they're trying something a little different, going in for that first 4 clear at the very beginning, not trying to opt to work their way in through Aviator, not challenging things head on, and instead just maybe trying to go for grenades once again, because they're still rocking that sledge, pretty much just utilized for that explosivity, and Freak still rocking that exact same Finka LMG, along with a couple other grenades across the board as well for Arial Rise.
Trying to take advantage of that explosive utility again, right? No Flores drones like we've seen them using in the past, but with a lot of those nades in pocket, you can do just as much damage to that defender utility. ReedSync will pop one of those EE1Ds, and you'll identify maybe Packer's position as he was forced to fall back from another well-placed nade. They know he's tucked in the back of Astro here, but as that is adjacent to the bomb site, Arial Rise are going to have bit of trouble actually pressuring that until they get some more openings here on the site itself.
Well, it seems like Reed Adams is up to his exact same old shenanigans once again. That Maverick opening up a line of sight for his teammates to apply more pressure onto the bomb. Still no one clearing out Astro just yet, though. That could be a major problem for the most part, especially if ReedSync isn't able to really do all that much on the line. Interesting use of those Kiba berries as well to try to slow down anyone inside of Master, but it quickly gets meleeed, reopening up that line of sight the Maverick just made earlier.
The interesting use of those Kiba areas, like you said, we really haven't seen them come into too much effect here on Villa, but now we're just seeing these gunfights and a flurry of bullets really start to paint the picture for this round. Mr. B will collect another kill. Gavini takes the head of Jay. It's ReedSync and Reed Adams who need to find a way to bring this one back. It's now them in this 2v4, and it doesn't look good. Woos with a DMR will take the head of Reed Adams as he bit off it more than he could chew, and ReedSync was busy rotating around to the other side. Reed Adams a bit too early there, not waiting for the support from his teammate, and Woo's holding the exact same angle. Will clean up the final player for Arial Rise, and a decisive victory here on Villa. It's exactly what TookTheKids will now deliver. 7-3 over Arial Rise, a great way to set up the remainder of this stage.
And in comparison to the last time we saw a trophy in play by TTK, Jonah, at least for Arial Rise, they had multiple points of attack. What was the only way we saw the attack trying to get pretty much in towards site? It was pretty much just Master. They had to be going in through bathroom as well, but because Astro's stairs was never cleared out, because there was still some behind the blue boxes, you had people in both sites looking down at Brick's doorway. It was just a fatal funnel bound to happen for Arial Rise. So all that TTK had to do was just sit in the site and wait, and that's exactly what they did. They lined up countless kills. It turned into a 4v1, and at that point, you've already gone too far in the deep end. You're drowning at that point in your own losses, and it's just another one added to the tally board here for Arial Rise, and it really sucks because we all know they can do better, but they still haven't been able to dish out those major wins just yet in this stage.
Yeah, we haven't seen Arial Rise find that potential that they had, a stage or two ago where it looked like they could do no wrong. Now it looks like they need to figure something out. But we said that both of these teams would have an advantage on Villa. It really favored both of their play styles. But at the end of the day, it looked like TookTheKids were just a little bit, a lot of bit better. 7-3 the overall victory, but we'll send things back to our analyst desk to break this one down just a bit further.
Talk about, I would, in the words of Jonah, I would say a lot a bit to talk about. Cookies, I'll start with you. Let's talk about Gavini for a moment. We had this discussion. Okay, Gavini, lights out, definitely quieter second half. How much of it is him? How much of it is the Finka? Because we saw Freak on the Finka, and he was good, but not quite the same effect as Gavini.
I'm actually going to disagree with you. You're seeing it on the replays right now. Freak was kind of going crazy. The problem was Arial Rise just kind of fell behind early. But to answer your original question, it really was just a whole lot of Gavini playing well, a whole lot of Finka being Finka. The Worstful makes a really good point all the time when we're watching this. The chip damage effect. You've got a bunch of defenders shooting pea shooters. Gavini, he's nasty on his own, but you give him an LMG and the guy is just dropping people straight momentum. And it also wasn't just him. I saw a whole lot of the knock kind of helping him on the entry. There was a lot of support. Woos didn't have 13 kills, but on attack he was solid. The takes in general were solid for TookTheKids. Not much you can complain about on their offensive side, and that's kind of what allowed them to carry the momentum into their defensive half, where they kind of put it away.
Now, Tanner, Arial and Rise, they did start picking it up on attack. They were playing well, but it seems like, unfortunately, with that defensive half, they might have dug themselves a bit too much of a hole, that they didn't leave themselves that buffer when they did get to attack.
I mean, they were making mistakes on the defensive half, and then when they went on the attacking half, they were again making more mistakes. Like things like getting a 4-2 half, not calling a reset, not getting information on site was probably the most critical one that you saw Mr. B get a 4K, I believe he got that round, where he just clutched it up and was able to bring the round back from nothing.
Yeah.
But like, I don't like. Arial played bad, yes, but TTK played exceptionally well. They had information on their defensive half. They had information on their attack half. They were doing really well in the entry department. They were playing their trades after their entry picks. Overall, like, we saw TTK's rise throughout this whole stage. They've been, every game that they've played, they've looked competitive. And I think as the stage has progressed, they've continued to show that they're improving game after game after game. And today was no exception. I just think Arial Rise wasn't up to task, but TTK looked, they weren't making very many mistakes at all today.
They look like a refined team, the team that, every team sees their version of their team being. What we're going to do right now is we're going to ask Packer a couple of questions about their team's victory, being TTK, and then we'll get back to you guys. Packer, congratulations. This was, I gotta say, we've been impressed with TTK all stage long. We've liked what you guys have been doing, but this game was next level, and against a team like Arial or Rise nonetheless. What were your thoughts on this matchup?
So they knew all the maps that we wanted to play right beforehand. They literally banned every single map that we wanted to play against them, and I don't know if they did our info or whatever, but they picked us up, brought us to a map that they should have won, and they got smoked. They knew the map. They DM'd us before the game started that they were gonna play us on Villa. But
well, it looks like they gave too much away then.
yeah, they just it's whatever. I mean, we barely practiced it this week. We smoked them. After Gavin ran in the first round and got ace, there was no shot for them. We knew we were gonna win the game.
Well, I mean, yeah, your attack was nearly unbeatable, 5-1, but you guys had the entry kill every single round.
Yeah, well, that's because like they played up in our face, and Mohesan Freak cannot start. That team is literally Mohesan Freak. If you kill them two, then they're just gonna struggle. So
now, how would you rate your team's performance? Because we're about that halfway mark through this stage. What do you think you guys have done well, and what are you guys looking forward to improving?
We keep choking in overtime. Our defenses have been struggling. We'll like obviously fix that as time goes on. We're gonna be due to the 2-week break, we're a lot better than we were before because we've had a lot more practice now and actually sort out our map pool and stuff. We knew that we were gonna get better as a stage, while teams will get worse and get figured out. So we will be hopefully a top team by the end of the stage. Probably like we're gonna be hopefully it's first seed, but some things have to go our way for that.
Yeah.
But I know we'll be great. We're gonna be nasty. No one can handle us. Me and Gavin, the goats, Mr. B, IGL, and Chris lurking, killing people in the back. And Woos is just baiting us, but he's getting his frags.
Well, I think you guys now are only 1 point back of Arial Rise for that 4th position, so you guys are climbing. Congratulations again, Packer. Hopefully we'll be talking next week or even tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully.
Bye. Yeah, as you guys were talking about before the matchup, that is a huge win for these guys. Tanner, you were the first one to bring it to our attention. Clawing back, or clawing, not even back, just clawing their way up, moving up the ranks. Huge game, but every game is impactful today, especially the next one coming up. When we go to a quick break, we're going to have Luminosity Gaming, the team that really needs to pick it up. They were first in stage 1. They're going to be taking on LSR, 2 teams with high expectations.